at the end of a job interview, they will give you an opportunity, usually, to ask them questions, right? This is interesting and useful for a couple of reasons. First of all, before we even get into what questions to ask, okay? If you start asking them questions after being invited to, and they are very enthusiastic about answering, and they go on at great length giving you full and complete information, and they seem really interested in talking to you, that's a good sign. That suggests that you passed the interview. If, on the other hand, you start asking them questions and they don't really seem into it, they give you very short, very curt answers, and they just seem to want to get this over with as quickly as possible, that suggests the opposite. It suggests that maybe you didn't pass the interview. So it's the one thing that I'm aware of where you can actually get some sort of feedback as to how you did in the interview. And the more experienced interviewers you have, or the more senior people you deal with, they will be more skilled in obfuscating their true feelings. So these differences will be very slight if you're talking to like executives, generally speaking, but they might be very pronounced if you're dealing with somebody very much lower down, like a recruiter. So that's one interesting thing about this. The other thing is that if you ask some weird questions, okay, if there's a problem, any kind of red flag with the questions you ask, that can sink the ship. You could have done very well in the interview up to this point, but if you ask something that makes them feel awkward or is borderline insulting or just signals that, you know, you're not, like you're a bit out to lunch, you're asking crazy questions that don't matter, that are irrelevant, that can still sink you. So it's very important to get this right. If you were to say, no, I don't have any questions, that also is a red flag, because all things being equal, it tends to signal that you're just not interested. You know, someone who's interested will have a ton of questions to ask these people, right? Because at this point, you really don't know that much about the job. You've seen maybe some of its aspects described on the job posting, and maybe you might have learned a couple of facts from the interview, but you really don't know the vast majority of pertinent details, you know? So, you know, it's very important that you get this right. The other thing you can do is, if you were to ask weird questions, you were to ask questions about benefits, salary, compensation, that kind of stuff, depending on the details, it can be construed as, you know, you really don't care about the job. You care about what you're getting out of this and not what you can contribute. Now, everybody knows that we're here to get a job because we need money, we need compensation. That's why we're here. That is of primary concern. But the fact that you're drawing attention to it in so bold a way right in the interview, that can signal that, you know, that's really where your mind's at. You don't care about the details of the job. You don't care about the company. You don't care about doing a good job in your role. You just want the cash, right? Or that's how it looks. So I would steer away from like asking about vacation, salary, pay, benefits, anything you're going to get out of it directly. And I would ask questions that's more about them, more about the company, more about the role, more about what they think of the role or the company or the industry, that kind of stuff. That shows you're more interested in them, more interested in the role, more interested in the company, and that's what you want to convey. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay? So, having said all of that, what questions can you ask? First of all, let's get something out of the way first. The very last question you should ask in a job interview is always, where do we go from here? That should be the last thing you say right before you start shaking everyone's hand or getting up to leave, or during it if you haven't done it up to that point. You know, if they get up, if they rise and you shake hands, or it's a virtual interview and you're starting to shut down and talk about, you know, okay, well, thank you very much, you know, that kind of thing. The closing, make sure you ask that question. Where do we go from here? That way you know the next steps. Are they going to call you? Are they going to post it on a website? What's the deal? Right? That should be the last thing you say. 3 questions are usually good. That one being the last one. The other two questions, here are some options. You could ask the obvious questions like, can I ask why this position is vacant, or what led to this opportunity being created? You want to know, did somebody retire, or this is a new position, or they're growing, or there's some kind of reorganization and they've decided that this is going to be a new role? You would like to know that, right? Now, other things you could say, you could ask about the role. You could say, what would your expectations be if I was in this role? What would be your expectations for me in the first 30, 60, or 90 days? Right? So you're interested in the role. You're wanting to get more details on what you would have to do. And it helps if when they tell you what those are, you say, okay, that should not be a problem. You know, something like that. You could ask about challenges. You know, what do you see as the greatest challenge for the person in this role going forward? What do you see as the greatest challenge for this company going forward? What do you see as the greatest challenge for this industry going forward? You know, challenges are always good. You could ask bolder questions too. If the vibe of the interview is good, a favorite of mine is to say, have you seen anything in other candidates that you haven't yet seen in me that I could perhaps speak to? You know, I asked this myself at an interview many years ago. It was for I think it was for a CEO role actually, and I didn't get it, by the way. But that was a really good question. They appreciated me asking that question, and they talked for something like 15 minutes about that. So it was very enlightening. You know, but those are those are probably good. Those gives you some good options for the first two questions, and then the third one is always, where do we go from here? So that's what I would say about that. Hopefully that makes a lot of sense. You know, remember, just because they finish their formal questions doesn't mean that you still can't screw things up or win them over at this stage at the very end of the interview. Hopefully that makes sense.